Welcome back after this nice lunch. This session is entitled ELAACC Research Session, Registry and Future Studies. Let us make a small comment what the rationale for this session is. It is not only to give an update on the ELAACC Registry, but also to provide a platform to exchange research ideas. Obviously, we are not yet in a position to provide grants. That would be an ideal setting, but that's not possible. But what we can provide is a platform first for an interactive discussion to get input by experts. So you're kindly asked after the individual research proposal to speak up and to make comments how potentially the proposals could be improved. And then, of course, the second idea is really to connect. So if you are interested in a particular proposal, please directly contact the speaker to see how a potential collaboration could be established, and that would really be a great aim. We, at the end, also would like to make a grading of the 5 proposals, obviously not of the ELAACC registry presented by Xavier, but of the 5 research proposals that will be presented. You can choose one, and then we will tell you which one is graded best. That's it. I think it's clear for everyone, and we of course thank already now every speaker that submitted a proposal. That makes it very lively, and we highly appreciate it.
Thank you, Lorenz. So Xavi is going to present the ELAACC registry. Thank you, Xavi.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to go fast to catch up some time, and try to explain again, you know, not the registry itself, but you know the way that it works and the way that you should adopt it or you can adopt it. So again, you know, special thanks to Jens-Erik and Anders and the rest of the ARUS team, because that, you know, was, you know, like the initiative at the very beginning in the database has been built by them, and they were the first to adopt that. So again, like the ELAACC registry works through REDCap. So this is very important. REDCap, it's a platform that it's free, it's secure, and you can apply, your institution can apply for that. So you can use REDCap in a safe and a legal way to keep, you know, just the database of your patients instead of using Excel or using anything else. And this is legal, okay? You know, it's the way that it is. It's secure. So there are just 3 ways that you can use this REDCap platform or the ELAACC registry. So use it as a database for you. I mean, every single patient, I use the ELAACC registry, the database, just to keep, you know, to have my patients, and then, you know, if I want just to check, you know, mortality, want to check, you know, for my own auditory, so I can do it, and it's very easy to use. Okay, it's friendly, it's tailored, and Jens-Erik yesterday actually showed it. So the other thing that it's online, this is also you know, strength, because you don't have to be, you know, in the hospital. You can feel it from, you know, anywhere, and you can have control access and 2-step check. So I mean, you can just like actually increase, you know, the level of security to go through this. And again, you know, this is a secure environment. So this is the way that it works. In this case, you know, you put my name, of course, and the login, like from my institution, and then it goes, you know, just to this 2-step verification. So I need just to verify that it's me. And then, you know, we have like the ELAACC research registry, and then we have, you know, like the patients, and as Jens-Erik showed you yesterday, so we can just go, modify, edit, and we have like everything there. Then, again, you know, this can be like something institutional. I mean, we have REDCaps not only for LAA, we have REDCaps for TAVI, we have REDCaps for TER, and we're building more REDCaps because it's actually, again, it's really useful tool because you can have like multiple projects. It's valid to evaluate procedural outcomes for, again, your own audit. No cost for the institution, no need for any specific application, available in most of the universities. Probably you don't even know that maybe it's available at your institution, so you only need to ask. So you can have multiple users, and it's secure environment. And finally, and it's why we're here. Again, it's a very powerful research tool, and probably you know that some of the studies that maybe you're participating, they're using REDCap as like just a CRF, system. So what we want with this ELAACC platform or registry, to have a common Excel format. So all this data will be transformed immediately, from Arus, from me, from anybody of you, in the same language, same format, so by clicking one, so we can merge all together. But you still have the control. So Jan-Ceric has my patients. He's going to have my patients if I send to him my patients, because it's my own database. So that's important, because from the ethical perspective, this is a point, because the owner of the data needs to be the institution in most of the cases. So this is again really important, and at the end what we want is that we're using exactly the same format. So, and actually we were pushing a little bit, last year. Not too much, because last year we made the last modification of the ELAACC registry, so we didn't want just to implement it because there was like a new version coming, so probably it's around 8 months. And here you can see that this doesn't mean that it's adopted. This means that Anders has sent, the blueprint that I will tell you what's the blueprint. So the blueprint means that, it's I would say it's the codes or the more technical orders just to create this ELAACC registry in the REDCap platform. So all these centers, this blueprint have been sent, and of course, some of them they have implemented and some of them don't. Anders asked, through email, and we got some response and some, no response. But at the end, this would be more or less the situation. Just don't take me wrong, because I didn't put, of course, I know that Switzerland, it's north from that, but it was just to see it well. So, and we have in theory, 6 centers in Spain, and, 6 centers in Belgium, then, Denmark, 3 centers that, of course, Arus and some other, UK 1, Switzerland 1, Italy 1, and Germany 2. At the end, just 1,200 patients from, Arus, you said that, Jan-Ceric, yesterday, and probably from the rest of the countries and patients, probably some, 1,000, 1,200 more, okay? And so far, and this was presented yesterday, so the drafted projects were the reproducibility of the LAAC anatomical classification in pre-procedural computed tomography for LAA closure, and the derivation and validation of a prediction model for percutaneous LAA closure that was run by, or led by Jan-Ceric and Lorenz, and probably they will end up, with a publication. So at the end, and this is important, so if you want just to join that, please, or make a photo, or just write down, my email or Anders' email. So we will, of course, tell you the instructions, and we will send you the blueprint. The thing that it's important to adopt that is this, because there are kind of 3 options. First, you need to check if you have institutional REDCap, that I tell you that most of the centers will have it. If you have it, it's fine. It's the best situation, because then we send you the blueprint with some instructions. These instructions, I will also ask, maybe the industry, to also maybe help with this, because sometimes, if you're not a little bit, familiar with this environment, could be a little bit difficult. So it would be nice just to have somebody, to always consult for more technical stuff. But anyway, so we send you the blueprint, and then with this blueprint you generate the ELAACC registry that you have it local. And you can use it as a database, and you can, have your own data and audit. And then, for the projects that you're interested to collaborate, you can send, for this project, the patients that you want to send, or the full database. Second thing is that you don't have it, so you can request. Your institution can request for a REDCap account, and then it takes a little bit of time, but, it's not so difficult. So if that happens, then you go to the point 1. And Jean-Cedric, the other thing would be used, because this has been in some centers, so like they're really nice and they offer, like their database, just to open from, that site, open a new account, a sub-account for your hospital. So if you ask for that to Jean-Cedric or Anders, so you will have your own database coming from the Arus hospital, but you're not going to have access to any other hospital. You're going to only have access to your data. Here, the only problem that I see, it's like the ethical. Like you should ask probably to your ethical committee, because you're going to transfer, and it's like a study, But you run it like a study, and that's fine, just to run a study for a limited time. But at long term, I think that the best option it's the option 1. So I would like to propose you, it's over my time, but I would like to propose, as we said yesterday, that we put a deadline that it will be October 1st. So we're going to be, Anders and me, we're going to be really open and active, just to all you're welcome to try to help you during this process of implementing. But we will close, the deadline in October 1st to do the first analysis of the patients that will be included, okay? So you can do it prospectively. I mean, it would be nice to have like some retrospective data. You can implement whatever you can. I mean, it's not necessary that everything is implemented, because then we will share, like the data that we have. And I make this proposal. So any question, anything, so is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavi. I don't know if there's any question. I think it's clear what we need to do. So, yeah, there's a question there.
So if in the future, if you publish any manuscript, how you decide on the authorship? Is it depending on the centers or the numbers, or because it would be good to have a transparency and clear from the outset?
That's a superb question, and like since we are not having like so many patients, this is something that we have not defined yet, but definitely we should just discuss about that in a group. Of course, if you are just putting one patient, I mean, and it's a big publication, so you're not going to get any authorship. So I think that like something like 50 patients makes sense, but this is something that will need to be discussed. And once we have all the centers that will participate, then we will share this information. Yeah.
So just a couple questions. Did you have a session dedicated to ERA? I missed ERA this year, but it'd be worth like trying to see if you can get a dedicated session at some of the interventional and EP meetings to talk about the registry, just kind of do this very same informational thing, but in a broader audience that, this is sort of your capture audience, but try and see if you can broaden the scope of things. And then also, we have our first paper that was in JACC 2020 from the registry. And so it might be worth talking to European Heart Journal and Europace sooner rather than later to let them know this is coming and this is a trans-European effort, and we're hoping the output will be important over decades.
You're very welcome in that sense. Like you what you said yesterday, we'll probably make a first, work, showing the registry, and that second stage would be with the patients, 1st of October. And you're totally right about, like having, meetings, maybe, Philippe, EuroPCR, we can have like a meeting, with like the people that are attending, just to reinforce, the ELAACC registry. Yeah, I don't know. So, Philippe, here?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Xavier. We have a lot of sessions at EuroPCR now and PCR London Valve. We are partnering with them as ELAACC, as a group, and I think it's a good opportunity to have such meeting and discuss where we are with these trials.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we now open the session on the abstract presentation. The first speaker, we changed a bit the order to respect the departure time of the individual participants. So the first talk will be by Martin Bergmann, and the title is, or the proposed project title is Establishing a 3D Sizing Chart for LAAC Pre-Planning by CT. And I just remind you how it will be executed, the session. There will be the presentation with a project proposal, followed by a Q&A session where you can constructively criticize and give your impact, and then at the end of the session we will make a voting. Thank you very much, Martin, for presenting your proposal.
Well, thanks for the chance to share my ideas. As you know, we've been a late starter with using CT and LAA sizing, and I tried to identify a good sizing chart as I'm used to use for TAVI. In TAVI I have one chart that I use, I think, for 10 years to go for Evolute or Sapien, based on the area, respectively the perimeter of a 3D reconstructed face at the annulus. So I thought that we need something in our field of LAA closure, because the IFUs of both these devices that we use regularly refer on TOE and the maximum diameter. And as far as I understand from industry, they won't take the effort to change the IFU, which always means a lot of hassle. And so this is something I think that might be or should be done by investigators. The number of patients that we need to validate that, I have not been able to calculate it precisely, but there are other papers out, like the one cited here, where already with 100 patients it was possible to get significant results in comparison to what we have. The endpoints have also been described before. I think if we just record, as I think would be possible with the registry data set that was just presented, the device size changes, the number of repositioning maneuvers, and the leaks, we have the key endpoints that would show this sizing chart that I propose to be working or not working. Obviously, the whole field is based on this publication by some well-known and respected colleagues here out of the group. I don't think we have to go through this in detail, but what for me as a beginner of measuring that, I still struggle how to exactly identify the plane and the ostium. It's clear on the one side we measure at the CX level, but the upper side is something more. I showed this picture before. I'm thinking of this area to be measured orthogonal to something like a central axis of the LAA. And what I did, obviously there's a special sizing chart that we need for the chicken wing with a special approach that is used for the amulet, where then the disc becomes more of the defining chart than the lobe. But in general, for all the others, this should work. So what I did in preparation was that I thought of the LAA ostium to be an ellipse, and that when we know the maximum diameter and we agree that more than 99% of our orifice will have a minimum of 50% of the max diameter to be the other area, we can calculate an area. And this is what I've done. with the help of some algorithms I used with ChatGPT, because actually if you start to look at the details, it's not that easy. So the 2 lines below are the ones that are calculated as a CT mean average diameter, and the landing zone, which obviously also has an overlap between the different devices. Whether to include already possibly an Amulet 360 sizing chart, as you mentioned that the sizings have changed, would be an issue of discussion, but I guess we could do that. I've done the same thing for the, the headline wrong is here, this should be Watchman. And for the Watchman, I also calculated a perimeter and a perimeter-derived average landing zone that we have. So the first step for me would be to validate the sizing chart, possibly in a retrospective design when we have already CTs and the investigators have already chosen a device. And the second step would be a prospective trial, possibly as part of the large registry ELAACC is running, to get some data on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Very interesting proposal. Any comments, Claudio? And also Elizabeth.
Martin, I noticed that the sizing chart is intended just for 2 devices. Is there any idea just to make the chart uniformly adopted for even other devices? Maybe just in the future, new devices is coming. I mean, just
Well, I think every device is different. The overlap is different that we have for the device. For the Amulet, we need a much more precise sizing than we do for the Watchman. So I think actually these charts have to be device specific. But obviously, if this proves to be working, like from the ellipse we can calculate the area, then we can transfer this algorithm to new devices if the companies come up with a sizing chart. But as I learned today already, some of the new devices come up with a CT sizing chart, maybe then already being part of the IFU, so that would make things a lot easier. But at the moment, we are stuck, I think, with that.
That's another question there, Elizabeth.
So I think it's a good idea. I also thought, why is this not available? Why do the companies do not invest in this? But now I saw you were always taking perimeter, but the way I've been doing it is always on the max diameter. So maybe it's also interesting to investigate which is the most correct one to use. Not only, maybe you can also check max or perpendicularity as another characteristic.
Yeah, obviously there are some estimates in there. What I did, I can send it around and share it, and happy to have any input. I really thought that we need to define like the overlap between the 2 devices, and by that having a uniform, let's say, chart by that. But happy to work on that chart before. Jens Erik, I'm interested.
We have looked at this in a retrospective way, actually both for the Amulet and for the Flex device, and we published on the Amulet device. So looking at all the Amulet implants that were successful, and then went back to our pre-procedural planning and looked at maximal area-derived and perimeter-derived mean diameters, what was the best. And for the Amulet device, it was perimeter derived or just simple maximum plus minimum divided by 2. That also worked good to predict the device we actually put in and had no leaks. And we did the same thing with the Watchman device, and we actually came to the same conclusion that using the mean or the derived diameters was more precisely in just using the maximal diameters. And of course it makes, as you have also highlighted here, makes more sense the more oval or eccentric your landing zone is to work with, not just the maximal diameter. But we didn't do it in a prospective way, so I think it should be very nice to do it in a prospective way, and you could discuss what will be your control group. Will that be a one where we just use the classical maximal diameter, or I don't know?
Well, as mentioned, I think so. I'm thinking myself of like a test object. Obviously, not having that much of experience as you guys have in AROS or so, and I think we will see many people getting into the field, EP people doing more LAAC. So to come up with such a simple sizing chart where you just measure an area or as perimeter, as you suggested, and then they can read what they then will have better results. And I just know from the good old evolution registry, obviously not done with the flex, but that we would have 80 or 75% of the procedures to have one size, one release. And my aim would be, rather than to go for retrospective comparison to other series, that, I mean, if such a sizing chart allows us to go like to 90%, one size, one shine, and the same for the amulet, we have achieved our goal. That would be my proposition, so to go for these kind of endpoints.
Thank you, Martin. Last question for Laura.
No, that I was going to say that the matrix sizing chart for amulet was already published based on retrospective, but 3D TOE and CT, and is accepted by the company already, so we can use it. And that it will be also a problem that the device is changing, and it's totally a different device, so I don't know if today, this year, it makes so much sense to put so much effort in the sizing of the amulet if we are going probably to change the device in 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if we start that, as far as I heard, maybe beginning of next year we get Amulet 360 available, so we would need to adapt it to the sizing chart of Amulet 360.
And the other thing is regarding the watchman, that you need to also keep in mind the maximal, derived from the 3D measurement, also because when you make the deformation of the watchman, it doesn't increase this maximal diameter of the watchman, because it deformates without increasing the maximal diameter, so you cannot put a device that it's smaller. So even if you work with area, you need to keep in mind also
you still need the maximum diameter.
Exactly.
So that was some of the thinking why I thought it's not that easy just to have max and min and divide it by 2, but rather to go for the max and then have maybe an area that's still in line with the IFU that we have.
Or maybe that the number that give you for the device cannot be smaller than the maximal diameter, or
exactly.
something like that at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We need to move on. So next presenter is going to be Claudio Tondo is going to talk about the comparison between left atrial appendage isolation and occlusion in the context of AFib ablation.
Thank you. This is partially just following my presentation this morning, and it's probably much more EP oriented. This is I understand, but what we are trying to figure out is whether or not possible just to reduce the rate of leaks by using ablation. In the past we used a REF, and now we have a PFA. We don't know whether or not PFA is much more effective in reducing the leak and by electrically isolated, especially in patients with long-lasting persistent atrial fibrillation. This was just a slide of our experience in the past. And if you look at the prevalence of per device leak in patients with appendage closure with or without the electrically isolated atrial appendage, just forget the success rate of catheter ablation in terms of maintenance sinus rhythm, but it seems that we have a tendency just to have less leaks as opposed to patients without the electrical isolation. This is just the paper that I show you this morning. Apparently, in a patient treated with the PFA, there is a reduced rate of a PDL, even though it didn't reach a statistical significance. So we don't have randomized clinical trial looking at this issue. I just show the preliminary data. This is from Germany, from the Ronald Thiel's lab, who presented, preliminary data concerning the isolation of appendage versus, without isolation, and you can easily appreciate that there is a trend to have less PDL, even less than 3 millimeter, or between 3 and 4, or more than 5. So, in the practical terms, what we are, going just to do is just try to design a trial in the, one-to-one patient to be included just with or without the elliptical isolation of the appendage. This is something that obviously needs just to have more patients included and more groups who intend just to explore, investigate the issue about the peri-device leak. That's it.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Did you make any assumptions on the sample size you would need?
Not yet. No, not yet. Probably we need just to have quite a good number of patients included, just to have the one-to-one randomization, because we need just to collect a lot of data, especially just patient with the persistent atrial fibrillation. This is probably the patient who had a higher recurrence rate, and therefore, especially when we do quite an extensive ablation, as we mentioned this morning, probably we have already isolated partially the appendage. So.
And which would be the endpoint? Yeah.
Just a PDL. I mean, just a
PDL.
This is a
any, and with which method would you? So T, CT, and at which time point?
Well, usually we use CT. Yeah, this is the aim, just to include the CT scan here.
Jens?
Yeah, I know that Devineia and Vivek Reddy in USA are already running this study, and I think the concept is very nice, that you inhibit contractility, you get very, very slow flow, and you get very fast thrombosis behind the device. That's the theory behind having less leakage and better sealing. But I don't know if their study, it's probably, I think it's Watchman Flex. I don't know if that's the plan here, or if it's more different types of devices. Or
different types of device, I mean, just, but the concept behind it is, if you look at the concept of the cutting out the appendage with the surgeon, that obviously you don't have, contractility, you don't have the appendage anymore. So, the rationale is just to investigate whether or not this can add an advantage, I mean, just rather than, occlusion alone.
Following that comment on the complete occlusion, did you observe so far an effect on the flow into the device? So not only on PDL, but also patency behind the device?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea, or from registry?
Registry, yeah.
So that would be part of the endpoint, or not?
It would be part of the investigation.
Then, because then you would probably not need too many patients, because the frequency will be 40% at 3 months by CT, which would make it more attractive, no? if you believe in the concept.
If you believe it, right.
Are there questions? And which device? Is that of any consideration, or you would be...
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. So, next speaker is going to be Jordi.
So the title is Concomitant or Sequential AF...
No, it's
sorry, Jordi.
Yeah, so it's
VHT-ELAACC, Federated Imaging and Clinical Data Ecosystem for LAAO Profiling.
Whatever it means.
So actually I'm a little bit afraid to bring up this topic after yesterday's discussion because I want to talk about patient profiling. Actually not alone, on behalf also of Professor Oscar Camara cannot be here, and Philippe from the Institut Cardiac of Paris-Sud. So to be honest, for me as an engineer, it's amazing all these ELAACC Registry, so congratulations to Xavier and all the other participants, because I think that it's amazing to have this kind of data, but from my point of view, there are two bottlenecks. One is that we are leaving behind all the anatomical part on the images. As you know, in the red card, you can submit information about your patient clinical data, but not imaging. It's true that then what you can do is, okay, let's do the measurements, and then manually you bring it in the red cap, but for me still this is the second bottleneck, because as I was talking with Ali yesterday, I mean, you physicians, you're very busy, you don't have time to do research and clinical at the same time. So in that sense, I think that we need to improve that if we want to do proper research and find what variables are statistically significant. So what we want with this proposal basically is to solve the privacy problem that Xavi also came up with this, and take into account also all the information that you can extract with the imaging. So our idea would be to put all the algorithms that allows you to extract the data automatically in each hospital, and then perform the anonymizing there, and use it then to do this profiling and analysis. Of course, this is very easy to say and very difficult to do. Here, please forget about REDCap, hemodynamics, and Federated. Now thinking about it, I think that it's better if instead of REDCap, it's clinical data. So we want to use clinical data, anatomical, that it would be the CT, and then the functionality that here can be substituted by hemodynamics, to have like the whole image of the patient. And to do that for the clinical data, and I think that all the variables that you have in the REDCap, it's enough. Then we would like to have this information from the imaging, that we have the capacity to extract it directly on the site in the hospital, and then you don't need to upload it anywhere. And the same with functional data, that it would be basically echocardiography. So this would be like the goal, but of course it's like very difficult to perform, because every hospital has a different software to obtain the CT, and have a different software to obtain the echo data, and all the forms for the clinical data. So our idea would be in the first year just to go, depending on the funding obviously, but each hospital and engineer, and to install everything you need on locally, so you don't have problems of data privacy, and then be able to link this with a REDCap. So extract all the anatomical features from the imaging and link it with a REDCap with the ID that you already have there. So as I said, you don't have problems with anonymization. Then the next year would be not only to run simulations, but to put together and homogenize all the data and try to doing some analysis, which are the features that we were discussing yesterday that they have to take into account to do that. And finally, then once we have, all the features that we know that can help to, or that they have an impact and they are not redundant, try to find a way to profile these patients. And then there is the last phase, that is just to test it. It's just to see if we can do one, for instance, hospital that has no CT, but has all the data of the patient. You have the the data, you upload it to RedCap, and then you look for an atlas. So you look for the closest match, and automatically you get like the optimal position, device, and size for each patient. So this would be the idea. Of course, this is a lot of work, as you can see here, and the first idea would be to start only with 3 and 5 hospitals, just to obtain at least 500 cases, if it's possible more, of course. But it's important that it's more than 2 hospitals, just to avoid bias on all these artificial intelligence algorithms. And then, of course, I would love to scale that, not only to use the register of Europe, but of any hospital around the globe that wants to use it. So, yeah, that's all. Thank you very much, and feel free to ask any question on the project.
Thank you, Jordi. Really interesting. Any comments? Any questions? So, Jordi, as you know, at least in Spain, we have a lot of problems, legal problems, for this type of projects. Do you think that you can overcome these legal issues? Because I know that you come from the technical point of view, but sometimes legal departments are not so friendly.
I mean, I cannot say, okay, 100% sure, because I like to be very transparent, but I'm quite sure that yes, because the imaging is not leaving, the hospital at any moment. I mean, what you extract from the imaging, for instance, is the 3D model, but without any clinical data, and then it's linked with ID that you already have. The same with the echo data. You only extract the measurements, and that's all. So any imaging is leaving, the same with the property of the images, and the data is yours. It's from the ELAACC or when you have the repository. So.
Jordi, Thomas from Aarhus. Very exciting. We are currently working on Appendage CT, a database where we're collecting clinical data on patients and then doing a core lab analysis on the CT, both pre-procedure and post-procedure. And my shoulder is hurting from doing all that core lab analysis.
Exactly.
Yeah, the software you're talking about to doing this analysis, how far along is that? Can you talk about a bit about that software?
So actually, it's not like a software per se. It's like to having an engineer that knows a little bit how to automatize that. So the process that we have, that we obtain a CT, we extract like all the data, not only the anatomy, all the parameters. The same with the echo, it's already done. With the data, would be easier if we standardize like all the process on how the hospitals gather the data. I mean, for each hospital we work, we try to do it also automatically, but some hospitals, they have it in a PDF form, others, in an Excel. So this part is the one that we need to figure out, that it would depend more on the hospital rather than if we have the technology.
So for imaging measurements, it would still be an engineer doing manual measurements with
No. It's just we need someone that can set up like the server inside, that's the problem, inside the hospital, and then it just connected with packs, with every machine that you have or software with the CT, and then automatically it takes the image, extract all the data, and send only the data in the ID that is assigned in RedCap.
Can you characterize a bit what you understand by digital twin? Is this a software-based simulation, or is it a true silicon model that you would produce and then make measurements on this one? So what's the definition of digital twin in your proposal?
Well, if you go to a simulation or let's say engineering congress, this is a huge debate. I just put digital twin to make sure that it's like personalized, and actually you can adapt it for each patient. But what you are asking, so all is not based on simulation. I mean, what you obtain with the simulation is just part of the variables that you cannot extract from, a simple measurement on the CT. So the idea of doing simulations is only to extract more variables, but then be able to, I think that it was Sergio Berti that was saying yesterday, using deep learning algorithms to detect which are the best features that actually matters on this profiling, and then you only perform, your research based on this. You know what I mean?
Yes, now I understand that it's not silicon that you produce, and because we do the same with coronary anomalies, but there we produce true silicon models
Exactly.
and two flow simulations, but that's not what you do.
No, so actually we use just this, for instance, flow simulations and mechanical simulations will be only one part of the whole analysis.
Okay, and the ultimate aim is to get, for example, flow variables that with that data set, newly created data set, you could predict then DRT.
So no. Actually, my final goal would be what is the best device size and type of device for each patient. Actually, the flow is just to avoid, DRT. But avoiding DRT is one of the part of device selection. So the final goal is not only, DRT. We could do that is like the best optimal position and device size.
Jens Erik, can we have a microphone? And then, yeah, sorry, I missed you. Jens Erik, please.
Okay, you want it retrospectively. It can be okay just to have it retrospectively, CTs and post-CTs, or do you want your study being done prospectively? That's one question, and my second question is, how dependent will your analysis be on very properly performed mitral, Doppler mitral curves? Because, a transthoracic echo before an LA procedure, it's not really focusing on flow across the mitral valve, so I would be afraid that the quality of the Doppler that you will get is probably doubtful, and in that respect, you might better do it prospectively.
No, so yeah, I think that here there are two parts. Obviously, first you need to do it retrospectively. At the end, if this went well, at the end you will have to do like a prospective just to validate it, in a proper way, but just to start it can be retrospective. In the second part of your question, you're right, but I think that it's very important to distinguish that this is not only focused on flow simulations. I know that always I put the face when there is flow simulations, but this is only of the part generating this. And this also is the reason that I want clinical data and I want anatomical data, because I think that it's not the only factor, and if one echo is not well done, I can have like other 400 cases that are covering that. You know what I mean?
One question there.
Roberto here from FIOPS. So a lot of you know already FIOPS, and I would like to complete also the information that was shared here. So what we have done already in the past, and we are doing now, so we deliver those services like this, so the anatomical analysis. So we take the CT, and from the CT, we apply AI for the anatomical analysis. And this is what we are doing today. And also for the security, we have already this, I will say, certificate about privacy. And also to go in this direction, so there is two things. There is the anatomical analysis and the simulation. And so on a humble way, if we can bring some information and help you in this evaluation of the anatomical analysis, we will be pleased to share what we are doing today with you.
Okay. Thank you, Roberto. So thank you, Jordi. We will need to move to next presentation.
Next. Now we move to Xavier Armario, and the title is Concomitant or Sequential AF Ablation and LAO Occlusion, the Timing AF Study. You already have an acronym for the study. Great.
So good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present this research proposal in this meeting. So it all started when the option trial was published. As you all know, in this trial, patients undergoing AF ablation were randomized to get an LAO occlusion additional or just keep our anticoagulation, and it demonstrated that in patients undergoing LAO, occlusion, the primary safety endpoint, and the patients that underwent LAA occlusion, sorry, I'm a little nervous, where the primary safety endpoint, so there were no big differences between both groups. So once the trial was published in our hospital, we said, okay, we have these patients, we can start doing this kind of patients in our hospital. And the first thing we said, okay, should we do them concomitantly or sequentially? We checked the option trial. There's like a 60% of patients which were done sequentially and a 40% of patients that were done concomitantly. But we tried to dive more on this data, and we didn't have much information in the option trial. So in our first protocol, we said, okay, we leave the option for both sequentially or concomitant, and then we can decide on more logistics things. Then sub-analysis was published and presented, I think it was in TCT last year. But it's important to remark that this trial was not designed to compare concomitant versus sequential. And this sub-analysis was not intended to compare these two subgroups. So what they did here is, okay, we have the concomitant group and the sequential group. So they checked that the outcomes that they got in the overall population, they were similar in the concomitance group and in the sequential group. But they were not trying to compare. And this is the baseline characteristics of both groups. There are some significant differences between both groups. So at the end, we cannot do a direct comparison between the two groups. Then they did the analysis for the concomitant, then the sequential, but again, they were not intending to compare both strategies. If you check the numbers numerically, I know they cannot compare, but in the concomitant group, the all-cause death, all stroke, or ischemic stroke, the numbers are twice the sequential, but we cannot conclude anything solid from that. So at this stage, we said, okay, we have the sub-analysis, but still we don't have the answer. So in our hospital, what we're doing is deciding more in logistics or patient preference, but we cannot tell the patient that the concomitant, we mostly do concomitant because of this, but we're not sure if that's the best option for the patient. So that's why we came with this research proposal. We think that the concomitant option is probably better than the sequential, but we don't have this data. So the primary objective of this research proposal is will be to evaluate the incidence of ischemic stroke, systemic embolism, and major bleeding within 36 months after LAA occlusion. And secondary objectives will include the incidence of device-related thrombosis per device leak at 3 months and 12 months, and then the incidence of cardiovascular death or death for any cause in this period of time. So this will be a prospective, multi-center, I hope multinational, open-label randomized clinical trial, which will include all patients with non-valvular atrial fibrillation undergoing AF ablation and LAA occlusion. Patients will be randomly assigned one-to-one to a concomitant strategy, which we define as performed in a single procedure, or sequential strategy, which is 2 different procedures. In all cases, as the option trial, the AF ablation will be performed before the occlusion. That's the first draw of the protocol, and of course many things can be discussed, but for a moment we will leave that both procedures are performed according to the standard clinical practice at each center. And that's another thing to be discussed. That's what we do in our hospital. We only included patients treated with the Farapulse and the Watchman Flex device, but that's something that can be discussed. So once the LAO is performed, patients will be assessed with TOE or CT and at 3 months and 12 months, and they will be followed up clinically as well. And then after that, until 36 months, they will be followed up in person or with telephone visit. So this is another important topic that can be discussed. That's what we're kind of what we're doing in our hospital, but that, so we have two protocols, one for concomitant, one for sequential. If you check the concomitant, that's basically what they were doing in the option trial. So once the LAO was done, if it was concomitant, they were doing DOAC for 3 months plus aspirin during this period of time, and then keep aspirin for 1 year. We have left like this so far. In my hospital, we're not doing this. We're doing DOAC for 3 months, only DOAC, and then keep aspirin for 1 year. But that's one of the things I would like to discuss with you. If we would go for sequential, usually we leave at least 2 months, because that's what the European guidelines recommend of anticoagulation after AF ablation. So we would do ablation, 2 months of DOAC at least. We usually do the LAO at 2 or 3 months after the ablation, and then we propose aspirin and clopidogrel, but I know that it's not the most common use, so it could be aspirin alone or aspirin plus DOAC. For me, that's the most important thing to be discussed. We propose if device-related thrombosis is observed at 3 or 12 months, that it should be treated with apixaban 2.5 until its resolution by TOE or CCT. And then the primary endpoint will be a composite of safety, which is major bleeding, and efficacy, defined by ischemic stroke and systemic embolism within 36 months. When we say major bleeding, we have decided for a moment to include the procedural bleeding and complications, because one of the options could be that concomitantly you have less or more procedural complications compared to the sequential. And secondary endpoints would be the individual components of the primary endpoint, all bleeding, device-related thrombosis and peri-device leak at 3 and 12 months, and then the cardiovascular death and death from any cause. So some definitions: ischemic stroke would be defined as a CHA2DS2-VASc, the bleeding score according to the Hasbled, defining a Hasbled of 3 or more as a high bleeding risk, and then the bleeding with the BAR criteria. The study population would be any patient with non-valvular atrial fibrillation, which is considered suitable and candidate for AF ablation and has a high ischemic risk, defined by a CHA2DS2-VASc of 2 or greater. We have not calculated yet the sample size, because we have to be sure about all the outcomes. And once we have the protocol clear, we do the sample size calculation. And the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the moment are quite soft. It's just patients, as I said, non-valvular AF that are candidates for AF ablation and have a CHA2DS2-VASc of 2 or more. And not important exclusion criteria, just some allergy to aspirin and clopidogrel and other indications for anticoagulation. So I would be happy to discuss any. For me, the most, or the 2 topics that we have thought more is, should we include more devices like Amulet or other brands, or just keep with Watchman? Because we said Watchman because that's the option trial. Another kind of AF ablation techniques like radiofrequency or cryoablation. And the second question is the treatment. Once we decide which devices we include, because we want to be sure that the treatment, the antithrombotic therapy that both groups receive are equivalent, and the differences that we might observe are not justified because of that. So.
Thank you, Xavi. Very interesting. I don't know if there's any comment.
I have a first question. Is this a superiority or a non-inferiority trial? And what's the hypothesis you have? Which is your hypothesis?
We said the hypothesis is that the concomitant is superior, and the reason why is if the study is done with the Farapulse or the pulse field ablation, theoretically, the edema is less, so we don't expect the patients to have more leak or DRT compared to the sequential group, and potentially we could have less complications because it's only one procedure, but we don't know, but that's the hypothesis. One transeptal access, so potentially could have less complications with same efficacy.
I don't know if Ole, you have a question. Anyway, Xavi, I think it's a key point, the sample size, because otherwise, I mean, it's a huge study and price really, really expensive. That is probably the problem that you can face if you propose this study. I don't know, Ole, do you have a question or?
No, it was also about the hypothesis.
Yeah.
Your sample size calculation, because I mean, an endpoint, a clinical endpoint, you're going to need more than 1,000. I mean, I'm a bit worried about your endpoint. It's a clinical endpoint to show there something, whether it's non-inferiority or, I mean, you're going to need more than 1,000 patients probably. So did you do some realistic sample size calculation there?
No,
isn't it easier to look for some more imaging endpoint like leak, or that would be maybe easier? And
so that's one of the options, because we said, okay, if we keep the strong endpoints, clinical endpoints, maybe we need too many patients to check that, and other option could be check for more soft, I would say, endpoints or imaging endpoints or DRT or per device leak.
I mean, the idea is great, but I also agree that it's not feasible because you just need too many patients, but it's a good momentum to include surrogate endpoints, so a mixed endpoint where you, for example, consider PDL, maybe even quality of life of the patient, and not only major bleeding, but also clinically relevant bleeding, and also death, obviously, because in both you have LAA occlusion. So,
tell me.
I completely agree with you, because I think that you need to start with, you know, like just maybe, you know, like something smaller and something like a complete or optimal closure, you know, and it makes sense, no? Because, you know, like since the you know, like the EP intervention, it's, you know, kind of, you know, altering the anatomy. It makes sense, you know, to see if there is difference. So I think that makes sense, and probably will skip, you know, a lot of, you know, your sample size. And the second, you know, asking or answering your question, I would keep, you know, DOAC, you know, in both groups, you know, so just don't put that. So DOAC
alone, or plus aspirin.
If you're doing the ablation, DOAC until the intervention, and then DOAC if you want aspirin, you know, like DOAC and aspirin, because it's like a non-bleeder population. But, you know, just keep, after the intervention, keep the same treatment in both arms, because otherwise, if you have DRTs or you have anything, then you will have, you know, like just a problem because you don't know where they come from.
Yeah, that's a question there.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that comment. I would stick with DOAC alone, even without aspirin. There's really not great data for adding the aspirin, and I think it makes the trial design much simpler. And I also agree with the comments. I would shorten up the time horizon. You could go with a very short time horizon and really look at acute procedural outcomes, and because that's really what you care about. You're looking at, you know, are you doubling the rates of vascular complication, anesthesia-related complications by doing 2 procedures rather than 1? And the other thing is, I guess you'll have to start looking at outcomes after the first procedure, because there's this issue of survival bias if you have to wait for both procedures before you start assessing outcomes. So you have to think a little bit about that as well when you start assessing outcomes. But I think it's a really important topic.
And speaking about DOAC, I mean, you mentioned that you would go for the Watchman because of option, but actually I would see it in a diverse way, because what is unknown is how the amulet performs in the context of DOAC therapy. So if you want to provide novelty, it would probably be a good momentum to study, at least as part of, as a subgroup, also amulet, and not Watchman, where the performance is actually well known.
So it would include
and you might be able to get funding from Abbott for that, because it's an important question for Abbott.
Yeah, I will not.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Any other question? If not, we proceed.
Yeah, let's move to the last presentation. So, Sergio is going to talk about establishing a 3D sizing chart for LAA occlusion, pre-planning by CT.
Okay. When we published our paper, a couple of months after the publication, while I was reading the paper, I thought it would be great to have an automatic tool for applying the classification. So I discussed it with our AI team, and we started to think that a neural network could be a possible solution. So we realized a neuronal network equipped with 2 graphic process units The system is based on 3 steps that are the 3 main pillars of the AI, the training, validation, and testing. And we started to train the system using the CT scan dataset of our patients. During the training phase, the machine was trained by 2 expert operators, one imager and one interventional cardiologist. After that, we go ahead with the validation step. The validation step is the output that the neuronal network provides on the basis of what it learned. And after that, the testing. The testing is the phase of is one of the steps of AI training where you provide to give to the system new cases unknown to the system. We published the architecture and the preliminary description of the system. And for the application of our classification, we find the first problem. At this point, we described the angulation of the LAA. We discussed it with our community at the time of the publication, but at that time, I didn't have in my mind one possible solution, but speaking with our team, probably this is a possible solution. Basically, the orientation of the main axis of the LAA according to the axis of the catheter is a composition of 2 angles, one equatorial angle and one polarization angle. That exactly are the orientation on the base of the anterior, posterior, lateral, and the polarization state, the deviation of the angle from the main axis. These 2 parameters identify exactly the orientation in the space of the main axis of the LAA. So, where we are now, we are in this situation. The first part of the neuronal network is trained. If we upload one CT scan, it provides a volumetric analysis of the left atrium, because we know that the volume, the maximum expansion of the volume is generally around 40% of the cardiac cycles, but not in all cases. So identify the maximum expansion and start to analyze the patient. The system is able to do an automatic segmentation and the reconstruction of the left atrium and the position of the circumflex that we identified as a marker for the ostium, and automatically provide an extraction of the left atrium and fossa ovalis and the ostium using a numerical segmentation based on the CT scan data, and provide a morphometric analysis on the base of what we state in our paper, and allocate the patient on the base of our classification. The machine has been trained on the base of all we state in our paper, the definition of the ostium, the definition of the LA, what is the LA, etc. And the system is provide an automatic process, is operator independent, is very fast, 3-4 minutes for a complete analysis, is modular scalable. That means that in the future we can improve the quality of the training on the base of what the ELAACC community will decide. Now we are here. The system is provide an automatic segmentation of the left atrium and of the LAA. It excludes all the other structure. It provides a localization of the fossa ovalis and the anatomy of the morphology of the left atrium, and it is able to identify 3 essential points. the center of the fossa valis, the center of the ostium of the LAA, and the main axis of the LAA. At this point, we can apply the spheric angle to the trajectory from the middle center of the fossa valis to the center of the ostium of the LAA, and we can calculate exactly the spheric angle is exactly for the main axis, the center line of the LAA, we use the Borodoni theory. That is the equidistance among all these points in the scene circumference, and basically we can obtain the orientation in the space in terms of two angles of the main axis of the LAA according to the axis that came from the center of the fossa valis and the center of the ostium. So we have a lot of possibility, but each patient is classified on the basis of the spheric angle that I mentioned before. Basically, the result is this one. We can have the different position of the orientation on the base of the anterior posterior and the deviation, the angle that is the deviation from the main axis. That is an indicator of a complexity. In this patient, two patients, where one is anterior posterior with the minimum deviation from the main axis, and the red point is the patient where the main axis of the LAA is deflected posterior inferior with a big angle, so it's a complex case. We trained the AI system with our 400 CT scan of the patient that we treated with LAA. What the proposal is create a data sharing for the ELAACC classification and validation using pre-procedural CT scan, post-procedural, and procedural outcome. In my mind, this tool should become a tools in the hand of our community for a automatic classification or application of our classification. So it should improve our capacity to classify the patient on the basis of our publication and the further version of our classification automatically. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Amazing proposal. There's one question, Jordi.
So, amazing. I think that it's wonderful work. I'm just curious, and I can ask Simona otherwise, but do you know how difficult it is? Because did you train this on dynamic CT, right? Or just the static CT?
This version is trying to classify the anatomy of the LAA, but it is not tested, not now, for different device. But the main structure of the neural network it has been conceived to be scalable. So we can train in the future for different aspects. In my mind, the next step will be to train the AI system using the CT scan post. So you have pre and post, so you have the success rate. And because this is not conceived for a preprocedural, not only for the preprocedural planning, we have a lot of instruments for preprocedural planning. The point is to have an open source version of an AI tool for research. So it's basically one piece of the project that you show it.
That's why I'm asking, just because I think that is amazing if you can compute the ELAACC score just automatically. But that's why I was asking if this is based on just a specific frame, you know what I mean, of the cardiac cycle. So the CT that you are extracting this is, for instance, in arterious phase or a venous phase, you know, because then if you are in the arterial phase of CT, it's easier to extract the morphology.
Is trained to identify the maximum expansion of the left atrium and consequently the maximum expansion of the LA.
Okay.
So the analysis that we do is based on the maximum expansion. Usually when you analyze the CT scan, by default we analyze 40% of the cardiac cycle, but we know that a relevant percentage of patients, in a relevant part of percentage of patients, the maximum expansion is not 40%, but it depends if the patient has atrial fibrillation or other valvular disease. The deviation could be important from 40% of the cardiac cycle.
I think we're advanced in time. Maybe the last question from Lisbeth.
It's super cool to see all those images. Very interesting technology that you and your team have developed. I have, I think, 2 questions. I'll make it short. So for the axis that you are trying to calculate, is it a reverse or an anterior or posterior axis? So you're using one line from the middle of the fossa to the center of the ostium, and then as the next one to define your axis, you would use from the center of the ostium in the middle, the center line of your appendage neck. Is that correct?
It's a good point. To identify the middle of the fossa ovalis is easy because basically it's a circle. To identify the centrum of the ostium is relatively easy because it's another more or less oval or it's a circle. The point is how to define the center line of the LA, because really graphically it seems a line, but really it's not exactly a line. We apply the Varadoni theory. It's not easy to explain, but basically, point by point, is able to calculate the equidistance point from all the part of the circumference in that point. And basically, you have this situation. This is the axe between the fossa ovalis and the center of the ostium, and this is the orientation of the LA. On the base of the orientation, each position of the orientation can be calculated with 2 spheric angles. The angle, the deviation from the main axe, this is the polar angulation, and the equatorial, that is the orientation on the base of the anterior, posterior, lateral, left or right. And each patient has a precise orientation of each LA. Has a precise orientation.
Sergio, we need to move because we have the poll and we have been told that the coach is going to leave at 4:30, so we need to move. Sorry about that. So
it seems to be a very attractive proposal.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So can we run the poll?
So the rules for the, maybe first, can you show the QR code so that everyone can scan it? Please dial in. Yeah, that's good. And then actually what we propose is that you just pick the most appealing proposal. So you have 1 vote to select 1 proposal. We go through the presented ones. Federated Imaging and Clinical Data Ecosystem for LA Profiling, Concomitant or Sequential AF Ablation and LAO, comparison between left atrial isolation and LAO versus to LAO and left atrial isolation in the context of AF ablation by Claudio Tondo, and then establishing a 3D sizing cohort for LAAC pre-planning by CT by Martin Bergmann, and then the AI for LAAC and ELAACC score by Sergio Berti. So 5 options. Please just make your 14 votees, so we have at least 30, I guess, attendees.
Only vote for one.
Yes, you can only.
When we see it here, it comes into a priority.
Aha. I was promised you can only vote on one. Is that not correct?
No.
Ah.
Yeah, but we see it in a priority. It comes out like 1, 2, 3, and I can. So we are voting for a prioritized order now. So yes, what we want to have first.
But so how is it now? Because I did not.
Generic is like a priority order. So the one.
So you need to select. But
select and bring it to the top. So
aha, you need to bring. Okay. I think 30 seconds remain, and then it will not change. So we have still some. So it seems that the AI-based proposals are the winning ones. We congratulate Sergio for leading the ranking for his AI for ELAACC score proposal, and then followed by the Federated Imaging and Clinical Data Ecosystem by Jordi, and third is concomitant or sequential AF ablation, and then the 3D sizing chart, and finally the LA isolation. So congratulations, and let's see what we can make out of it. And